Welcome to Al Jazeera. If you're just joining us, Syria's conflict is increasingly affecting neighbouring Lebanon. Syrian rebels are suspected of firing rockets that landed in Lebanon's Baalbek region, where Hezbollah has a lot of influence. Hezbollah fighters helped Syria's military to recapture the city of Qusayr on Wednesday. And in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli, there's tension between Sunnis who back Syria's rebels and the supporters of President Bashar al-Assad. Well, the Lebanese army has entered locations around the Bab al-Tabane region of the city to try to maintain order. Well, Mohammed Vall is in the Bekaa Valley in northeast Lebanon. Mohammed, growing concerns about the violence spilling over into Lebanon. What more do we know about these rocket attacks earlier on?
Yes, the rockets were fired during the night, according to Hezbollah, and they hit an area near Baalbek. One of them hit a house. According to the sources of Hezbollah, 2 children were wounded in those attacks. 11 rockets were fired, as I said, and the rest of those rockets actually did not create a lot of damage. But it is psychological war, as we understand, and it is also linked to the involvement of Hezbollah in the capturing of Qusayr by the Syrian government. There is a lot of tension here. We have been driving in the area. We have seen a lot of tension in the area, and we have seen funerals organized by Hezbollah party. At least 2 of them were announced, and we have seen them, those processions moving towards Beirut, or that direction, the direction of Beirut.
And the issue, of course, of Hezbollah being involved in the fighting alongside Syrian forces is a huge problem there. Are we seeing a backlash against the group?
If your question is about the inside Lebanon itself, what we have just talked about is rockets that supposedly have been, because there are no documented proofs of who fired those rockets. If you are talking about inside Lebanon, instead of rockets sent by the Syrian or fired by the Syrian rebels against Hezbollah inside Lebanon itself, yes, the situation also is very tense. The backlash has not yet been transformed into action. We haven't seen much happening in terms of like exchange of fire or attacks on Hezbollah. But in the north, and that's not exactly directly related to Hezbollah, in the north, in Tripoli, there has been this traditional rift between the Alawites in Jabal Muhsin, an area of Tripoli, and the Sunnis of Bab Tabana. That situation has intensified of late, and now it is coinciding with what happened in Qusayr, but it is not directly directed towards Hezbollah. These are traditional foes, and they have the enmity between them has intensified after what happened in Syria, the revolution in Syria. Now the Lebanese army has been called upon by many politicians, many political leaders today to keep the order, but it is a very tough task. They are trying to do exactly that. They have captured a cache of weapons in Jabal Muhsin today, and they are trying also to spread in Bab Tabana, but they are meeting with a lot of resistance. There is a big number of armed men spreading in the streets and shooting at the army.
Mohammed, thank you. Well, Syria's government has retaken the main border crossing into the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. Rebels seized the area early on Thursday. The battles have left 2 UN peacekeepers injured, and Austria has pulled its peacekeepers out of the UN force there. Well, the UN mission to the Golan was established in 1973. It includes 900 peacekeepers from 3 countries acting as a buffer between Israel and Syria. Austria is withdrawing its 380 UN soldiers in the Golan, and that will reduce the force by more than a third. Croatia, Canada and Japan have already removed their soldiers from the area due to security concerns. Al Jazeera's Sue Turton has more.
The rebels launched a dawn raid on the town of Quneitra, taking the Assad forces by surprise here and really taking control right up to the border with Israel. But the Assad forces took that area back by sending in tanks and heavy artillery. This contravened the agreement between Syria and Israel that no such heavy artillery will come close to the ceasefire line between Syria and Israel, an agreement that has lasted for the last 40 years. But it now seems that the rebels have been pushed out of Quneitra and are fighting further up up the Israeli border all the way further up along the line, along the fence. We're also hearing that some of the UN disengagement observer force have now been told they will be pulling out. The Austrian contingent of some 380 troops will be leaving because the situation here has become so intolerable. The Secretary General of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, is very concerned about the situation here and what this means to a group that has been patrolling this ceasefire line for the last 40 years.
Meanwhile, the EU has announced an extra $520 million in aid for Syria and neighbouring nations engulfed with Syrian refugees. José Manuel Barroso, the European Commission President, said a solution to the conflict is needed.
The Commission will deploy a comprehensive package of assistance with humanitarian and non-humanitarian support, mobilising an additional €400 million for Syria and neighbouring countries, in particular Lebanon and Jordan, including the host communities there, which are also most severely affected. It is important that other donors can also rise up to the occasion. However, we know that humanitarian support is only a palliative. What we need is a political solution to the conflict that guarantees a halt in the violence. We need unrestricted and unconditional humanitarian access, and we need a transitional inclusive government. The situation in Syria is a stain in the world conscience. We all have a duty to act.